introducing my panel. To my immediate right is Nyakan Munyeki. She is the CEO and founder, she has a number of fans, clearly, of the Timeless Women of Wonder and Timeless and Magnificent Spaces. And a big part of the reason we're actually here today. And just to her right, Martha Karua, revered Kenyan politician. She's a former long-standing member of Parliament for Gishugu constituency. Kenya Union of Domestic Hotels, Education Institutions, Hospitals and Allied Workers, try saying that in one breath, 33%, also not bad. But now when we go to something like Kenya Building, Construction, Timber, Furniture, Allied Trades, that comes in at a whopping 2.7%. Clearly, there are some industries that women are more involved in than others, and that's a big basis of our discussion today. I'd like to start and go to my panel just by looking at the trends that we see. Is it important for us to have women, not just as tailors, but also in the gas and oil sector and other sectors? What are the trends that we're seeing globally, locally, regionally? How can we be competitive? I'd just like to start by asking, what is your understanding of the trends that we're seeing in terms of future industries? And then we'll go to how women fit in there. I'll start with you.
Thank you, Nancy. If you look at the growth that's happening throughout Africa, you're finding that Africa is in the point where we're really starting to do a lot of exploration. We're now becoming aware of the natural resources that we have and starting to ask the question of how we can start to tap into those resources. How can we optimize them? You're looking at infrastructure being a great tool for development and for economic impact. And those pose opportunities for everybody in terms of businesses. You're looking at technology being a big driver for driving business. How are we utilizing technology to scale our efficiencies and businesses? I mean, it is a future industry that is the future. You're looking at construction. You know, if you look throughout Africa, and Kenya in particular, but as well throughout Africa, you see a lot of, despite the economic crisis that was happening around the globe, you find people are still building. We waited for the bust, but it has not bust yet. So how are we tapping into those opportunities? So in my opinion, if you look at the trajectory of Africa's growth, we're actually focusing on tapping into the opportunities that exist around infrastructure, mining, the extractives, oil, energy, and gas. And those are the areas that we now need to start aligning ourselves to. Then you look at the equation of women in this. When you look at a lot of exploration and drilling, a lot of the people who are misplaced in communities, the most affected are women. So what are the women's role in defining, you know, the rules of this exploration as far as environmental impact is, as far as sustainability and livelihoods are? Women's role is very important there. But when we look at the economic side of it, you find that the greatest percentage of women in Africa are still not where you would call their position being in the highest strata. They're still on the grassroots. And if you look at the economic opportunities that women have in the grassroots, it's a lot of like cleaning jobs, you know, the mainstream jobs, which with all the development that we're seeing, a lot of washing clothes that was quite a key activity for livelihoods has been replaced by washing machines. So this renders the women's economic opportunities redundant. But when you look at, for example, a sector like construction, it's forever booming. And if women could just transform their mindsets and tap into these opportunities, we do two things. We are bringing women into the equation of economic development and transformation, but more importantly, you're also increasing their disposable income. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Honorable Karua.
We're looking at more participation by women. We're looking at women venturing into areas that were traditionally thought to be male-dominated areas. And we are seeing women trying their hand at things that we would not have expected them to. I know that there hasn't been very many women contractors, but in the last few years, women contractors are coming up all over the country, building roads, in construction of houses, residential, commercial. We are seeing women getting in. not in the numbers we would want. We're seeing women getting into the oil industry. They may not be many, they may be 100 right now, but the trend is that women are getting in. And we need to encourage, we need to prepare, we need to give room, because as society, as I will start at the family level, as families, as society, we have a responsibility to open up opportunities for our children, irrespective of gender. So we are obligated to open up opportunities for both men and women. And our Constitution actually does exactly that, by providing quotas for women in elective and appointed positions. It's paving the way that women have to be excluded. We are included. We are coming from exclusion to inclusion. And that is something happening the world over. The Community of Nations acknowledges this. In the just now past Millennium Development Goals, now translated to Sustainable Development Goals, all those commitments for inclusion are there. So it's up to us to get ready to take off, right, and to consciously march, looking for spaces. My grandmother once told me that space is never given. It is taken. We better get ready to take it.
Let me try to put some scaffolding on what has been said just now. And I'm going to express them in terms of shifts, shifting from the future, past to the present and to the future. We have been carrying out a lot of analysis on what we call structural transformation of Africa. I understand one of the previous speakers who we used to work together spoke a lot about the AU work that we are doing with the ECA in trying to analyze Africa up to the year 2063. What we see is as follows. Now, you have Africa changing in terms of how many people live in the rural areas, those who live in the cities. In other words, the dynamics of urbanization is changing very rapidly. So you see the shift from villages to the cities. But what we find, of course, is that in Africa, rather than the pull factor that attracted people into factories in the old European civilization, what we see in Africa is a push factor. People are pushed out from the villages into the cities, and they are pushed out of this setting without the kind of skills that will allow them to survive in the cities. So our cities have become mostly slums, for the most part. Second sort of phenomenon we see is that we see people moving from the villages with very low skill into cities that require extremely high skills. The kind of things, jobs, factories that we need to be pushing for in our cities are the sort of industry that will create jobs. Unfortunately, we are not seeing that. Africa actually, the bad news is we are not industrializing. In fact, the figures show us that we are de-industrializing prematurely. One of the powerhouses of Africa, South Africa, to some extent Nigeria, have been mostly stagnating in terms of the domestic contribution of manufacturing to overall GDP. The figures are very clear. Africa is not industrializing, and therefore, one of the vulnerable groups are women. Because what you find is informal economies aggregating in our cities. And for the most part, they are the women who are mostly in these places. So we have a very dangerous trend in Africa that we need to be very aware of. Another very important trend that we see is the transition. Now, in the old civilization, what you see is people, agriculture transforming itself to industry and then transforming to services sector. What we are seeing in Africa is that people are moving directly from low productivity agriculture into low productivity service sector. Because the kind of services we have in Africa are extremely low productivity. ordinary SIM cards, I'm not sure we are producing for ourselves. When we talk about services, people tend to, equate this to the kind of thing you find in Boston, in Brussels, in Route 128, in Silicon Valley. Sad to say that's not the case. Right now, much of our employment has been shipped to China. I have nothing against China. All the mobile phones, all the telecom equipments and so forth that we use here are manufactured elsewhere. Their service sectors have grown, but ours are not growing. So these very big trends of transition from village to city, from agriculture to industry, which is not happening, but what we see is agriculture moving straight into services. So we have two poles, low productive agriculture and low productive services. And this is why you have what we call structural unemployment that we have in Africa.
So, sorry, I'll just cut in there. You seem to be making a case for industrialization.
Yes, indeed.
But some might argue that why should we compete in a space where there's so many people? Why go from no phone to the landline when we can go straight to the mobile phone? Is industrialization the way that we should go in terms of following the steps that other nations have taken, or should we just leapfrog to find another way that we can contribute value to the global economy?
Thank you very much, Nancy. I think leapfrogging is a very misunderstood concept. You don't leapfrog into a space that you are not aware of. To go to services, which is extremely technical, when you compare to the mechanical engineering, you are moving to electronics, into computer science, software engineering, and so forth. You must build a base, an industrial base that allows you to stand on your feet first, before you can begin to go into what you call mechatronics. I believe that Africa needs to industrialize. We can start from where we are. What you eat, what you drink, the house you live in, these are basic engineering skills that had existed for 300 years. They are not rocket science. And if you don't do that, you end up with what I call structural unemployment. I see in many African countries, graduates of computer science, engineering, all running into banks and doing all kinds of things for which they are not trained. So I make the case very strongly for industrialization. I think we need to industrialize. Others might have the capabilities more than us, they are more productive, but I believe that we can start where we are from. Thank you.
Thank you. Phyllis, speaking on this,
Yes.
Since he's talking about industrialization, is that something that you agree with? Is that a notion you agree with?
It's something I agree with 100%. In fact, I was going to jump in there because as a country, we are not going to jump to high-level services until we industrialize. Currently, our competitive advantage is agriculture. 24% of our GDP comes from agriculture. One way to quickly industrialize is to value add on the agricultural products that we have as a country. We're only doing about 16% value addition, meaning there's a lot of scope for us to be able to grow. And looking at women, now down to women, industry is contributing to about 10% of our GDP. If you put building, construction, and mining to about 17% of the GDP. Who are the most affected when industry is not doing well? For me, it's still women. Because if you look at the entire value chain, when industry is progressing quite well, there's a lot of linkages forward and backward in the value chain. And women are the ones benefiting because they're the ones at the farm level, they're the ones supplying services, they're the ones engaging in cross-border trade, so they're the big beneficiaries when industry grows. And every time I speak about industry, I say that when we look at industry in isolation, we might think that industry is a small deal. It's just 11% anyway. But industry has a multiplier effect to other sectors of the economy. It has linkages to all the other sectors. If your industrial sector is doing well, you have high-level services. You'll have your logistical sector doing well, your banking sector, so your agricultural sector. So industry, really, for me, I agree with my fellow panelists that as Africa, we must industrialize to the benefit of the continent, to the benefit of women, who will play a key role in that industrialization process.
Okay, let's hear your thoughts on this, Rita. It seems like we're getting agreement across the board. Is there anything that you can add, or maybe you disagree with? slightly.
No, actually I agree, because I run a transportation business, and this is where you see the real value in terms of value addition or industrialization coming to play in terms of the multiplier effect. I give an example. I have this customer who's gotten a contract to just supply samosas to Naivas, a lady who used to cook samosas outside by the roadside. The Naivas came close by, and the samosas were extremely sweet. So the managers of the supermarket used to go out by the roadside to buy the samosas, and they told the management, look here, this mama makes a lot of great samosas. We can integrate her into our value chain. So this lady comes to my office because now the dynamics have changed. She's no longer making 100 samosas. She's required to supply the entire chain of Naivas supermarket with samosas. What is required? Health certificate, formalization of her business, getting all the certificates, and looking for transportation solution to be able to serve this. So the whole dynamics here changes just because Naivas is opening new facilities, and there is mamas who can be able to take advantage of that opportunity, and they're buying vehicles, they're buying trucks. And you can imagine, as she continues to grow that business, she's getting sophisticated, she's having the computer system that will support her supply chain, material delivery, and all that. So I strongly support industrialization because I see the impact of industrialization on business.
And that's a very good example, a brilliant example that you gave there as well. But let's change tack a bit. From TechnoBrain, you're looking at technological innovations. Where does that fit in when we're talking about industrialization? The rest of the world is looking at self-driving cars and all sorts of technology. Are we going to be left behind if we don't focus on that as well?
All right, I think in the aspect of industrialization, every day in Africa you wake up, there's a need that needs to be solved. So from a technology perspective, the innovation still has to continue. And that's where we feed into the industrialization bit. As women, I think in IT you always think women cannot fit in, and stereotyped from when you're a child that certain careers are for men, certain careers are for women. But it's that's like simple basics whereby why is it we don't have water? What can technology do to ensure that Nairobi water or water within the rural area is coming on a constant? That's probably a need that needs to be filled. So technology-wise, it can never be left behind because the world has shifted. The way we shift, the way we think has changed. Everybody has a phone now. The technology has changed. But the simple thing is, let's solve the basic needs.
The fact that the society is patriarchal, that it gives preference in some instances to men. And we are brought up the same way, both men and women. So we too, deep down in us, are convinced that certain things, the priority goes to the man. And you may not realize that that is the way you are reasoning at the back of your mind. So I think consciously, beginning at the level of parents, and then going to the level of society, we've got to create the space for women. I always see how parents struggle these days, everywhere in Kenya, even in the remotest areas, to educate both boys and girls. So at the family level, we are already trying to unwind from that reasoning that some children have priority over the others. But then we go and get lost in the middle because we still, as mothers, tell our girls what careers would be better for them. Even some of the teachers will expect that girls will opt for certain subjects.
But are there some things that women are naturally better at? People will talk about soft skills like communication. Are we fighting nature, so to speak, when we say that?
Not at all. Not at all, because we restrain children as they grow. I'm sure everybody will remember that if as a child you climbed a tree, in my language, Kikuyu, there's a name for tomboy, Wajakehe. You see, if you're gonna climb a tree, so you're being restrained by little words, little cautions. So you grow up knowing that. When I was choosing career, my father, who was a teacher, and he's still living, he's a retired teacher, he told me that perhaps I may want to be a teacher. And I asked him why, and he told me that teachers have 3 months holiday every year. And when I get to the stage of having a family, that will be very good. You see, he was doing it out of love and out of what he knew. And I told him I want to be a lawyer. For some reason, he thought lawyers can go and work out of the country. Sort of like in embassies. I don't know who had convinced him that way. So, nevertheless, I went and pursued what I wanted. And I do remember that my career teacher in A-levels was discouraging us from filling the law course. And this time not as girls. She just told us that only 60 people will be taken in the whole country. We had only one university, University of Nairobi. So she would stand, hands akimbo, and ask, do you think you're among the 60 top brains in the country? It's so intimidating. I just told her, madam, if all career masters are doing what you're doing, I'll end up being the only applicant for law. And that would be easy. So we chose law, 5 of us in our class. All of us were taken. We were the highest number for the law class of 77, second only to Alliance Boys, which had 8. So little things that happen to us as we grow up serve as a restraint. A girl wants to be a mechanic, and I remember one little girl, next door neighbor, she didn't go beyond class 7. Those days it was 7, not 8. And the mother took her to be a mechanic. And the whole village was laughing that this woman is crazy. That girl is very comfortable as a mechanic today. And many other girls have taken her. We are not fighting nature. We are fighting the way society is structured. We want to get out of the mold. Let every child grow naturally. Things will fall in place. I was asking a cousin of mine who is right here and doing very well in the building industry, in roofing, Irene, I asked her, how did you think of roofing? Because I don't see where she got it from. This is these people who are doing unusual things that were traditionally left for men that are going to encourage others. She's in technology. That space would ordinarily be expected to be a man's domain because everything, technology is not even that technical like mechanics. But the moment we hear something that is not familiar, it's for men. Let's free ourselves. And the first people to free themselves is us women because we are the nurturers. We are the ones who are putting a yoke on our children as they grow up. Telling the sister to cook for the brother and the brother is bigger. Telling the sister to wash the brother's clothes. Only sending the girls while the boys sprawl in the house. Let us change this ourselves.
Okay, so socialization plays a very big role. I want to come to you, Rita, and hear your thoughts on that. You're the MD of a very powerful company, a role many would expect a man to take, just from social cues. What's your experience?
Yeah. So as we continue to engage, we realize that industry is lacking some special skills. For instance, engineers, female engineers, for instance, we think women are going to play a very important role in future industries. Just what we're going through today, as a motor company, we are aware that we need women to be more involved in designing of cars. For instance, when you enter a car today, don't you feel like, where is the space for my handbag? Right?
Yes.
So then we are attracting women and training them and equipping them. We are going to universities. We are sponsoring so that women can take special courses where we find gap to our industry so that they can be able to help us design the cars that will be attractive to female customers, because this is where the world is going to. So there's There's that stereotyping, this is where you used to be, but then there's also deliberate effort to attract female employees, to train them so that they can be able to take advantage or to support companies to get to the next level in terms of technology and design.
Great point. Phyllis, besides the socialization and those kinds of cultural barriers, are there institutional barriers that maybe you have faced personally?
I had an interesting week last week. I spoke at the KU Career Week, and yesterday I was speaking to Form 2 students who are selecting the subjects, and it was a mixed school, so it had boys and girls. And I think at the career decision level, that's also another place where we need to make the right decisions. I actually got questions like, can women do a course in engineering? Can men do home science? And I realized, I thought we were past that. It seems it's still a problem. So there's a certain messaging from the home that is still living with us. So I think we need to empower women to know, and even men, that their careers are not dependent on sex. You can choose a career irrespective of what side you come from. There's a story I had last year that for me was a mindset change, and I wish society could really transform its minds like that. It was during a dinner that we hosted for the president of Liberia, Ellen Sirleaf Johnson, and she gave a story. She said that in a nursery school, children were playing, and the teacher came and asked them, what do you want to be when you grow up? So the boy says, I want to be a vice president. So the teacher asks him, that's crazy, why would you want to be a vice president? Then the boy says, because president is a job for women. So for me, if we can transform mindsets that far, where we realize that women can do all these things, and really that you should choose careers because of your talent, because of your skills, and not because of your sex. So really at the high school level. And then in the workplaces, I think we consciously need to deal with affirmative action. We were discussing in the room before where we were saying that as women, sometimes we view quotas as something negative. It's not negative, because there are historical reasons why women are not in certain positions. And if we don't feel them, then nothing is going to happen. Someone visited me last week, the CEO of Institute of Economic Affairs. He's doing a study on diversity and pluralism in the workplace. And one of the things we're discussing is how the public sector seems to consciously discuss and actually try to bring women on board. But when you interview the private sector or industry, there is no conscious effort to change those things. We're not sitting and actually asking how many women are employed in the organization. So it's a question we need to address. And once you bring the women in, are we making the workplace comfortable for them? Are we ensuring that if I'm at a child-giving age, I'm able to go on my maternity leave comfortably? Am I able to come back and work and go home in time to breastfeed my child, and all those things? Because sometimes I think we make women leave the workplace earlier than they needed to, simply because we don't make it comfortable for them. So we have to look at the home level, at the career decision level, and at industries. What are we doing to make women comfortable?
Okay, Nyakan, you have a comment, and as you get into that, I just want you to touch on the issue of tokenism, because a lot of times when we talk about quotas, empowerment, a few organizations will say, okay, let's have 1 or 2 women, put them in some high positions. Yet actually there are no women rising consistently through the ranks. How do we deal with that?
Before I answer that, I'd like to look again at some of the barriers. I think my panelists have underscored a lot of barriers that I agree with, but I want to bring in the role of the political goodwill in encouraging women to participate. A country like Kenya has made some great strides on legislating into policy, affirmative action, where 30% of all public procurement has gone to women, and actually bringing in and allowing women also to play in these sectors. But that said, when you look at the regulatory framework, it still poses major challenges. When you look at construction, a sector that I play in, there was this complaint of 2.4 billion Kenya shillings that has been allocated to women. But when you look at the number of women who are actually coming up to do business with government, it was still very, very low. And so when we sat with government to assess why are women not taking up these opportunities yet, we have actually laid it out for them. You found that the regulatory and requirements to play in the sector was very intimidating and limiting for women. Major barriers. Construction, women needed to have cranes, certain amount of money in the bank. They had to have certain licensing. And if you look at all the things, capital, land, they were always disqualified, you know. So personally, I went through that whole process to see what does it actually take for a woman.
But just to add on to that, I think one of the things that comes from a very early stage is, as a child, if you grow up and you're a very talkative child, or you can stand up, you're given, like you said, words like you're bossy. So you start hearing you're bossy because you know you can speak up. I'll give you a practical example. I have a 5-year-old and I also have a 6-year-old son. And so my son said there was a boy who was kicking his bag in school. Then I asked him, so what did you do? And then he said, I told him to stop, but he didn't stop. So my daughter chimed in right away. She said, you told him to stop, he didn't stop? You should have told him, next time I'll slap you. Okay, so I cautioned the fighting bit, but I was proud that she was able to stand up and say, you know what, I would have taken a stern action about it. And it's the same in the workplace. I think the ambition gap is huge for us. Men will always lift up their hands when they're even at 40%. Women just, first we are cowards, we are thinking, okay, so they'll say I'm bossy or I talk too much, and we don't take up those opportunities. There are barriers indoctrinated in us from a very young stage. So even when you know you're very capable, you think 2-3 times before you can actually go into a position. So that bit of how we grow up and the socialization of how we raise our children is very, very important.
I'll actually ask you if you feel like you were socialized in the opposite direction.
One of the reasons I champion women's causes is because my mother was someone who was very bright. My grandmother had 9 children. 2 of them survived. My mother and my uncle. And my uncle, till he died, always says, my sister is better than me. But guess what? When they were about to enter secondary school, I think it was called a secondary school here, high school, my mother was asked to step down for the brother because they couldn't afford to pay for the 2 of them. When I was about to enter university, my mother was the one who was, more or less paying for me. She sold all the gold she had to send me to university, first year. But thereafter, luckily for me, I was able to get a scholarship to continue. From that moment, I actually gave this, last week somewhere I was having a discussion. I made up my mind that I will always push for women's causes because we have a very negative mindset in our communities. I never see difference between men and women. In fact, I've met a lot of women who, given the opportunity, are far better than their male colleagues, but they never get a chance. One of the articles or a book that we did in UN Habitat, because I manage the production of the flagship report called the State of the World Cities Report, I began to do a series on gender and also a series on youth. The first edition of that youth report, you can still find it on our website. It's called Leveling the Playing Field. And that particular publication is called Leveling the Playing Field. It's for those who are interested, you can let me know, I can still get you some copies. It discusses the institutional and structural barriers that you were talking about. We looked at several inequities in society. Economic, social, political, cultural inequities that creates a barrier between a person's when they were born, and that is where it actually starts. If you were born in Kibera and another one is born in Mutaiga, their life is already defined. For instance, we carried out huge surveys in 5 regions of the world. One of the most notable quotes that I got from a boy from Kinshasa, Kingston, Jamaica. He said, my address defined me. He said, my address defined me. In fact, to get to a school on the other side of the city was a problem. Because the moment they knew you came from this particular slum, you are defined. So that is a social inequity that defines a person's life. And this cuts across all gender. But women are even far more vulnerable. So we have to deal with these issues at a very fundamental level, at the political level, for our politicians to know that this is as an explicit issue. You cannot take them as part of the broad general purpose policy. That is why we create all these gender policies and so forth, and youth policies. Economies are growing in Africa, but we are not transforming. What we see is what I call fast growth, slow transformation. So I think the issues are very fundamental, and for us, it's something we need to take on board as we move
very
forward.
Briefly, what do men specifically need to do to make sure that women get the opportunities that they should?
As Martha said, space, nobody will give it to you. You have to fight for it.
So do the men not have a role?
Men have a role, women have a role. All men who have fair-mindedness, they should fight for women's rights, because it's in the interest of society. If you leave 50% of your workforce untrained and discriminated against, the society suffers. One of the things we found out at an empirical level is that when you exclude a huge part of society, it's growth reducing. In fact, informality is, in terms of economic growth, is growth reducing. These are facts. In other words, you find that you go to take Kibera and then take maybe Cambridge Computer Park. You see the huge difference. Two children, they are born same day. They have the same brain, probably have the same IQ. This one will, by the time he's 23 years old, he's earning £120,000 in Cambridge, because he's a computer software designer. The other chap, he's born in Kibera, he's running around selling SIM cards. He probably earns $1 a day. What makes the difference? Where you grew up. The barriers are huge, and all men and all women must fight for it. It's not in our interest that women should be excluded.
Yes.
I think like the function that we have today here, for me, I look at it as an opportunity for mentorship and sharing. And this is a big contributor to getting us from where we are to where we need to go. Hearing these great stories about successful women like Mheshimiwa. I believe she grew up in a humble environment and has taken her space to be where she is a leader. And I take myself also as an example, having grown also in a, would say, disadvantaged background when you compare Cambridge and Kenya, but really mentors supporting us to grow to where we are. So my boss, Mayor Aman, helped me to be where I am, because for you to be able to get to leadership position, you need to have the right orientation. And one area that was identified as a weakness in my developmental program was that I didn't look direct at the boss. It's a cultural thing, right?
Yes, yes.
But I was bold enough to say, look, you have to understand where I am coming from for you to be able to appreciate and help me to get to the culture that I should now adopt as a CEO of a company. And I was very frank. When I grew up, looking at your father direct in the eye was perceived as to be disrespectful. So you look at your dad at an angle. The same way I look at you as my boss at that angle. And he told me, we are going to work on it together. And we worked on it, and he made sure that my entire organization was aware of this situation, so that you don't mistake and deny someone an opportunity to progress just because of a cultural challenge that you really do not understand. And mentorship, speaking up and supporting learning circles for women, we need to get more of this. What Nikal is doing here is in itself a great movement towards empowering women.
A great contribution. Honorable Karo, you wanted to say something.
I just wanted to pick something Rita said before. Where are women to design a car that would fit a woman's need? For instance, where to keep a handbag. And I remembered a TED talk I had watched that the medicines we take when we are sick, they're modeled on men because they primarily have been tested on men. And they may not be suitable for women because we have differences, or they may not be as efficient. So what I'm trying to say is that there is a gap for women's participation in almost all industries. You see, where we bring in our contribution and we also shift the focus just to the men, but focus to both men and women. Not just in the design of cars or medicine, but even in everything else, so that we are included. And I also think that when we talk of mentorship, sometimes we may think just of people in high places. Our first mentors as human beings are our parents and the people around them. I actually credit my grandmother paternal. She, a graduate of the social school, and my mother and father. And then the people around me, teachers, some relatives. And as you grow, we have mentors everywhere, just like Rita. My primary school teacher, when I was in Standard 1, kept on encouraging me. And he followed me throughout all my years. I do not think he would consider himself a gender activist. But for some reason, he noticed that I had something that needed to be grown. And Rita, I must tell you, I grew up as a bad girl. Because I look at people directly. And I was sometimes considered rude.
Yeah.
And now I'm considered arrogant. Because I will hold my ground. So
Although
please,
a man probably wouldn't be considered.
no, a man will not be arrogant, he'll be assertive. These are adjectives for us. So I keep on saying, to claim my space, I want to be bad, if that's what it takes. And if it's construction, as a woman, don't mind starting at the very low level. You know, just little contracts around your county. You will then get money to go and get those other licenses, to rise up. We really must do it.
The mindset of construction is hard, and construction is stones, and construction is really needing a lot of strength, is a mindset we have to bust. I'd love to ask an old lady in the room, Charity, please stand up. Charity, please stand up. Does everybody see Charity? Charity is 84 years old and graduated out of our construction program. She's a mason. And when she and 5 other women her age walked into the room, even the trainer said, Nyakan, this is for fit people. You know, those guys, man, get them out of the room. And we said we're not going to be biased. If she believes she can do it, she's entitled to an equal opportunity. And she got it. But this is where the trick is. Charity doesn't have to be in harnesses on a rooftop. You agree with me? It may not be safe for her life. But Charity understands the dynamics of construction, what masons are doing, what the materials are, and everything. And she can be a wonderful supervisor. Are you seeing how we kick ourselves out of construction? Because of how we are viewing it. There are opportunities for her to supervise. There are opportunities for her to actually do stock taking within the construction sector and guarantee a revenue. So also, what are we doing to tap into those opportunities?
We're going to come to questions from the audience shortly. So if you've got something you'd like to ask, please think about it now, make it succinct. And but before we get to that, I just want to challenge my panel, because I'm sure there have been so many talks like this. There have been a lot of fora where we talk about getting women involved and getting women empowered. But when we look at where we are, I mean, 3% of women in this country own land titles. 3%. How do you get a loan to grow your business if you don't have a land title? How do we get tangible, real results from what we're talking about today? I'd like to challenge my panel to just, in your experience, in your estimation, what is that one practical, tangible thing that we can do, that we can walk out of here saying, this is what I'm going to commit to, that will actually help us to achieve a real result, so that when we come here again next year, we're actually talking about some progress that has been made. I'll start with you, Ellie.
Okay, thanks. I think when you put it that way, it sounds huge. And it really just needs to start at the grassroots level. I want to give you an example. One of the initiatives we started last year, and it was due to the fact that we got a HR director who's a woman, is there was an opportunity where she created a group called Pink Potential. And Pink Potential basically is empowering the women from beneath to bring them up. In technology, you can imagine a big company like Technograde, we are only 36% as females. And so it has to be a deliberate effort where you create that opportunity for the other woman. Sometimes I think we get caught up in the how, so we don't start. And that's just something I think like women feel so that it's too big. But you can start within. You start within your home, your house help. Have you helped their children go maybe to better schools, remove them, maybe it's from Kibera so they can get a better opportunity? Have you empowered her? I mean, we can be selfish because you like her, you don't want to. But she could be a better house manager if you empowered her with how she could save so that she becomes a landowner. I think just within ourselves,
yes.
Because you do want, it becomes a trickle effect. You empower her, she empowers her children,
yes.
And it keeps going and it keeps going.
Yes, yeah. I like that very much. Turn your house help into a house manager and see how that changes things. But I like that point because it's small things that we can all do. We shouldn't leave this to NGOs and people who deal with this kind of thing. We all can do something. I like that very much.
Okay, for me, first of all, I wanted to say that men do have a role to play at a very basic level. As brothers, how do they treat their sisters? I have a big brother who always told me, you can do better than me. So anytime we do an exam, if he gets an A-, I must get an A. So that's how I've always had men who lift me up. I'm an only girl. My dad is someone who's an engineer and someone who's pushed me. My mom has a PhD in psychology, and because of the support my father has given her. So it's having those kind of men as brothers, as bosses, the kind of men who encourage women to succeed. But at a basic level, what do we need to do? First of all, we are getting into a political, and we're getting into elections. We must vote women in. Because a lot of the things we're talking about are at a policy and legislation level. If we don't have the right laws, we don't have the right policies, it will be hard to turn around some of these things. So let us encourage women to stand up for political positions, and let us vote them in, because it will make a big difference. And then at a level of the association I represent, there are a lot of opportunities. We have signed trade agreements. For example, we've signed AGOA. And did you know that the specialty food sector in America is worth $70 billion US? That's a big market. We are an agricultural economy. Those are opportunities women can take advantage of. We have a lot of opportunities that women are not aware of. So raising awareness and letting women know where the opportunities are. We have an industrial transformation program, the Kenya Industrial Transformation Program, that wants to focus on certain industries as priority to grow. Are women plugging into these opportunities? Or will it be a scenario where by the time we are done, we've exported, we've traded, and we are talking about women being left out of that equation? So for me, I commit to raise awareness, at least about the opportunities that exist in industry, the opportunities that exist in the markets, and support of SMEs. Because women, a lot of women have their SME businesses. How do we ensure that they are growing? How do we ensure that they are having market linkages, financial access to finances? So really growing the SME sector in our country would be a contribution that I would try to do through the position I hold at CAMP.
Very important points there, especially considering 81% of our National Assembly and 73% of our Senate is male. And when we look at policy and legislation, that's definitely an important thing. What are your thoughts?
For me, I continue to use my resources to educate women. In my company, we have a women council, a deliberate effort to develop female employees in career, preparing the senior female employees to take board positions. We have board vacancies, and we are told that we don't have enough women to take a board position, especially in public companies. So really developing women around there. I have a training program, and the training program I take 13 university students who just finished across the board, engineering, marketing, finance. I hired them for a period of 1 year, and it's 50-50 boys and girls. Train them. If we have a need, we consume them. If we don't have a need, then we release them to industry. By that time, by 1 year time, they would have gained some insights around corporate business, well trained and experienced, and therefore can add value immediately to another company if I don't take them up. So this is the 3rd year I'm running that program. I pay them a salary, so that's great for the female. I have them this scholarship. Every year I take 4 children through education of my factory employees, low-level employees, and I have made a deliberate effort to take 2 girls and 2 boys. Again, whether we have girls who have not reached a high level in terms of marks, but still I would take the girls. So it's a policy, must be 2-2. So 390, and there could be a boy with 400 or vice versa, but must take 2 and 2. So those are some of the activities that we are working on to really deliberately as an organization continue to empower women.
Great, some practical examples. Professor, what do we need to do? What is that tangible thing that we can start doing?
Thank you very much. I support all the private, individual supports, but I would also want to suggest that we should push for very explicit laws in Parliament to articulate what we want. I think a forum like this can come up with some very unique laws to actually push women in industry. And this is really one way in which we can make an impact. It can take us many months, many years, but I think if we begin to move for laws that will make sure that women have certain key advantages, for instance, in not just economic policy, but the industrial policy of the nation, we must push for very explicit clauses that will support women, and especially getting rid of informality over the long term. I'm sorry to say, there's a lot of romanticization about the informal sector and so forth. And I always ask people, why is it not in Boston? Why is it not in Washington, D.C.? Why don't we have a Kibera in the midst of Maastricht? If it is that good for people, then why don't we ship them out to where others are? So I think one of the things I would like to advocate is cities without slums in the next 20 years. Because women are the most vulnerable, they are probably the ones who bear the brunt of living in this kinds of very degraded environment. So if you want to take up Nairobi without slums, we'll be happy to support you also. There are cities all over Asia now, like in India, they have the notion of cities without slums. And we'll be counting on civil societies like this to actually push for this notion. Lastly, we always talk about voting for women. But I'm sorry to say, this is not just in Kenya, it's also in my own country. Ethnicity has blinded us. I always ask people, it's from my area. Is it from your area? Have you ever taken a penny from him? Vote for this person on the issue of their competence. This woman is competent, but you won't vote for her. When the time comes to do it, we don't do it. Africa needs to move away from ethnic-based campaign and voting to issue-based campaign. I would like to see her at the very highest level. People who fight for people.
It is possible for us to transform, for that parliament to have both men and women, even without quotas, through voting. For the county assemblies to have enough content of women, and we can make sure that if you vote for a male governor, you vote for a female senator, so that the leadership of that county is transformed. It is possible to transform Kenya. It is policies and action. If there isn't a critical mass of women, this will be a song forever. And at the personal level, as Rita said, each one of us must endeavor to do something, to lift somebody else. You must be able to look back and see how many people you have lifted to be able to step out and claim their space. I want to thank you.
Thank you. I think there's a case for partnership building as a strategy to drive growth. Just bringing in the various players, government, the private sector, and the development agencies to rally around a particular cause, because they each have a role to play, especially in driving industry, and then building the gains in a more efficient and faster manner. That has actually worked for us, and it guarantees impact at a much faster level. The other thing we just have to say, and I think Honorable Martha Karua has summarized it well, just take the step. Just start and just do. It is us who will make that step, who will start to execute what needs to happen and do whatever we can to do whatever we need. And the last thing I want to say is we have a fresh opportunity to be innovative about how we solve the problems of Africa through industry. If you look at the subject that Professor has actually mentioned about the slums and the slums in cities, I personally believe in our lifetime we can actually transform those slums into cities, because it's a three-sided approach when you actually build skills, as Rita was giving an example. And if I use examples of construction, if you build the skills of women in construction, one, they tap into new opportunities to create revenues. But number two, their vulnerability is eliminated, because when women don't have money, especially at the grassroots, their children are affected, they can't have good healthcare, food, and accommodation. So that is switched. But more importantly, you find that these women, and perhaps men as well who get this training, then become the builders of the community. Like the women in Kibera are now going to paint their houses, they're now rebuilding their houses, they're putting new, and in just a matter of time, the outlook of the slum will change. So you find that they are the biggest contributor to transforming the outlook and rebuilding that city which was previously a slum. So let's be innovative.
Right, thank you very much. I just want to take it to our audience now. Is there anyone who has a question, a contribution that they'd like to give?
Mine is more of a question, especially when it comes to barriers. And I'll use myself as an example. There's an application that I'm doing for health, which I feel will benefit health, especially in the slum areas, in terms of social participation in checking if these clinics are registered or what. But the question again in someone's mind is, how will I manage to get audience with maybe for example Dr. Mailu or his office? And the other thing is, you propose that solution, then the next thing is government has tender. So who am I tendering with? Techno, 7Cs, really? I mean, in as much as we want to see it as a mental barrier, in real sense, when it comes to tendering, then you really can't compete with those people. So again, you're left with your solution wondering, where do I take the solution? Thank you.
I think the procurement laws in Kenya have changed, and now with e-procurement, I think there's an opportunity. First, I think get your paper, and I'm thinking your papers are in order. The reason why companies always beat single individuals is because sometimes we don't go through the process of getting the papers in order. And you can't just say it was a long process to get our construction stuff in order. But I think get that in order. And maybe an opportunity to network. I think there has to be a way you have to be relentless in your pursuit of what you want. Because I think if you stop at the fact that you've created the software, then nobody will get to see it. Are you creating a platform where people can see what your innovation has done? Are you maybe approaching hospitals? Because first, for me as a developer, I'd want to see a proof of concept. Is someone using that software that it's showing some certain impact? As women, and it's unfortunate, we always have to do a little extra than the men to get space and create space for ourselves and even the technologies or the innovations we're coming up with.
I wanted to speak on the point of the opportunity to network. Associations like ours exist for that very purpose, to come together, rally around ideas and lobby the government on certain issues. And in most meetings I'll call, maybe for even the technology space, there'll be one woman in the room. So some of the companies you mentioned will be the ones driving that agenda. So it's important for you to be at the place where decisions are being made and get involved in driving the right agenda.
Just to say, if it's a new innovation, a software, you need to think of patenting, because the bigger sharks will swallow you and own it before you have finished pronouncing your name. Number two, we have actually to admit that there is a lot of corruption and opaqueness in the tendering process. You will be told that there is 30% for women. They do give some sort of 30%, like taking a small road, dividing it into 10 pieces and giving to 10 women, while you're giving 5 big roads to men, and then you can be able to say there was 30%, or denying the women repeatedly, finding why they don't qualify. Alone, it's very difficult for you to fight it. Let us use the power of networks. No other women who are trying like you. If you are 3-4 women who have tried and you have not gone through, sit together and write to the ministry saying you promised us 30%, it's not there. Join with other women's organizations. There's also the Gender Commission and they are paid to mind our business. Go to them and ask those questions. Why is it that we are failing every time? Because it's not because you're not qualified, it's corruption. So we've got to fight it, and we've got to use the power of networks to be able to find space.
So don't take no for an answer, and again, no one is going to give it to you, so you're going to have to take it. Is there another brief contribution? Let's go here.
Okay, my name is Joy Kula. I'm here with African Women Entrepreneurship Program. We are a U.S. State Department initiative that's set up to mainly support women to increase their capacities to export under AGOA. And so my question is directed to first Madam Phyllis. I was just wondering, under CALM, if you do have particular programs or initiatives that are boosting women to get more involved in AGOA. Last week I attended the National Business League luncheon, and we've got a lot of American delegates who are coming here and are actually asking why are maximizing on this opportunity. But I believe you agree that under AGOA it's about capacity, being able to meet the quantities, it's about quality and the standards that they've set. So I just wanted to find out, as CALM, are there areas of partnership that we can work together with yourself? And then to Honorable, I think in terms of AGOA, we do need a financial facility to be able to, meet the demands for benefits such as AGOA, and we do need government support in that. Is that something you can assist us with or guide us in how to get that?
For AGOA, what we are doing this time, we've talked about AGOA for a number of years. It was signed on May 18, 2000. And until today, we keep talking about not taking full advantage of AGOA. There are 6,400 products. How many of us even know what is on that list? So the first thing we are doing is raising awareness to our members who are manufacturers on what is on that list. And working closely with the US Trade and Investment Hub. Last week, for example, we had a seminar where we were speaking about specialty food and telling them about the opportunities. And a number of the people in that room were women who are trying to export to the US market. So we're raising awareness, and we're trying to create even market linkages. Can we have the buyers come here, tell us what the specifications are? We're going to have factory visits where they look at the factories and tell you, for you to be able to access the US market, you need to produce in a certain way. And when you go there, what are the trade fairs? Can we participate in them? So we are facilitating that process jointly with the Trade and Investment Hub, and we hope that we can scale it up even more. But it's already happening. But become curious and even identify some of the products on that list that we can already start exporting to the US.
I know there is the Women's Fund and there is the Youth Fund, but we've politicized those funds because they are dispensed from the offices of members of parliament, which makes it a little difficult for every other person to access. But I also know that when one has an idea, there are many other financial outlets that can sponsor you, banks and all that, and microfinances. So one just has to look around for what is available.
I'll add an example from Tanzania, what Tanzania has done to address that challenge. The Women's Gender Commission in Tanzania actually approached the government of Tanzania and asked the government to buy land. And that land was going to be used as collateral for women who want to take loans. So that, access to capital was one of the things that was a challenge for women because of the cultural practices where land belongs to men. And so women were having challenges. And so what they did, they bought land, and now women are able to come and take loans against that land. So they have then addressed that challenge, and we could learn and see perhaps, what channels we can use to borrow from that.
Mm-hmm. That's a good addition.
When I was coming today, I was told I need to be at a conference, and I didn't even know that it was timeless. But when I heard Senator Jewel speak, I was really inspired. I ran in the last election and I was #2. And I've been, this is for you, I have been to so many conferences where we're told women stand up, yeah, let's stand up, and our mentality is open. But to be honest, when you're in the field, you're alone. I'm from Kajiado County. Last Friday, we had a development county forum, and we asked all aspirants, 2017 MCAs, to stand up. 25 men stood up, and the forum was filled with more ladies and young women than men, but 25 men stood up to be MCAs. I had to stand up, and I was the only female. And still, they call me Karetu. say I'm not qualified because I'm not married. Anyway, that doesn't stop me at all. I am still fired up. But what I believe is that in 2013, if I had one extra push from someone, I would have been the MCA. I come from Kajiado County where 25 of the MCAs, okay, we have a total of 5 constituencies with each 5 wards, meaning 25 of all MCAs are all men. In the entire county, only one woman was elected as an MP. All other elected seats were all male. So I believe we need to move, as our leaders here I am saying, we need to move from talking to creating structures to ensure that that woman governor is in her seat, that senator woman is in her seat, that MCA. Because I remember in 2013, to be honest, everyone who was running MCA, it was you and God. You hear talks, but no one person is there to support you. So I feel like we need to move from talking to actually getting to the ground and helping Madam President here, aspirant, to get to her seat. We need to move from talk to action. Thank you very much.
And we hope that you continue to do so, and we believe that as you continue to show that bravery, others will join you. They really will. I cannot thank enough my panel today. Haven't they been wonderful? Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you very much. And to you as well, of course, it's been a wonderful audience. We have to leave it there. But of course, the discussion continues online, I believe. Our hashtag today, taking the step, that's our hashtag, so we can continue that conversation on Twitter and on social media. Thank you very much for having been so good and so engaged. We'll have to leave it there for now. We're going to take a quick photo.